Right now, inside 300 million homes, there is a small, undomesticated apex predator sleeping on someone's bed. It demands to be fed, gives nothing measurable in return, and completely ignores every person in the room whenever it feels like it. For 10,000 years, humans have played God with nature. We took wolves and engineered German shepherds and Chihuahuas. We took wild cattle and made dairy cows. We took the jungle fowl of Southeast Asia and made the chicken nugget. We forced the entire animal kingdom to bend to our will. But cats were never supposed to happen. No human sat down 10,000 years ago and decided to create them. It happened entirely by accident. And that accident started with grain. 10,000 years ago, something changed in the region we now call the Fertile Crescent, the arc of land stretching across modern Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. For the first time in human history, people stopped moving. The invention of agriculture didn't just mean food, it meant staying in one place. It meant building walls, it meant storage. And storage meant grain. Enormous quantities of grain, piled in clay jars, and underground pits, and wooden granaries. More food than any group of humans had ever held in one place in all of human history. And grain meant something else: mice. Within a few years of every early settlement, the rodent population exploded. Where humans went with their grain, rodents followed. Where rodents went, something else followed: wildcats. Specifically, Felis sylvestris lybica, the African wildcat, a small, amber-striped, yellow-eyed predator that even today looks almost exactly like a tabby cat. Slightly larger, more muscular, with eyes that don't soften when they look at you. These cats discovered something: that living at the edge of human settlements was profitable. Infinite rodents, no competition from larger predators who feared the smell of fire and people. An ecological paradise if you could tolerate the proximity. Most wildcats couldn't. The ones that could had a specific genetic trait, a slightly reduced fear response, a slightly higher tolerance for being near humans without running. Here's the part that changes everything. Humans didn't tame these cats. The cats tamed themselves. Not through some warm evolutionary partnership, not because they liked us, because our grain stores were the most reliable food source within 100 miles. The cats that survived near humans were the ones slightly less terrified of humans. Those cats had more kittens. Those kittens inherited the reduced fear. Generation by generation, over thousands of years, the cats around human settlements became incrementally, almost accidentally, less wild. Not domesticated, not tame, just slightly less likely to run. In 2007, evolutionary geneticist Carlos Driscoll published a landmark study in the journal Science. He traced the DNA of domestic cats worldwide back to a single source. Not multiple wildcat populations, not different domestication events in different regions. One. All 600 million domestic cats alive on Earth today are descended from a single small group of Felis sylvestris lybica in the Near East, roughly 10,000 years ago. One population of wildcats decided humans were useful, and that decision changed everything. In 2004, archaeologists excavating a Neolithic burial site in Cyprus made a discovery they weren't expecting: a grave, approximately 9,500 years old. Inside, a human skeleton, buried with extraordinary care, surrounded by offerings, objects placed with intention, and 40 centimeters away, in the same deliberate position, facing the same direction, oriented toward the human, a cat. Not a wildcat dragged in by accident, a cat placed there intentionally by people who cared enough about its death to give it a burial. Here's what makes this extraordinary. Cyprus has no native wildcats. None. No wildcats evolved there. No wildcats swam there. For a cat to exist on that island in 9,500 BCE, a human had to have deliberately carried it across open water. Someone 9,500 years ago brought a cat on a boat across the Mediterranean. This was not a working animal like an ox or a goat. Not food. Something else. Something that mattered enough to transport across the sea and bury you when you died. The relationship between humans and cats is older than writing, older than the wheel, older than most things we call civilization, and it began because mice moved into our grain stores. By the time of ancient Egypt, something had gone seriously wrong with the arrangement. Cats had stopped being useful. They had started being sacred. The Egyptians had a goddess named Bastet, originally depicted as a lioness, fierce and dangerous. Then, as domestic cats became fixtures of Egyptian household life, the lioness became a cat. Bastet became the goddess of the home, of fertility, of protection against disease and evil, and her physical manifestation on earth, the cat sleeping next to your grain store. The Egyptians began mummifying cats as religious offerings, not hundreds, not thousands, millions. In 1888, an Egyptian farmer stumbled onto an ancient mass grave near a town called Beni Hassan. Researchers estimated it contained between 80,000 and 300,000 mummified cats. One site. Cats became so embedded in Egyptian culture that killing one, even accidentally, was punishable by death. When a house cat died naturally, Egyptian families shaved off their eyebrows as a sign of mourning. And here's where the accident became global. The Egyptians knew they had something valuable. They tried to keep it. Exporting cats from Egypt was made illegal. The state sent agents abroad to purchase and repatriate Egyptian cats that had been smuggled out. It did not work. The Phoenicians traded cats along their entire Mediterranean network. The Greeks acquired them. The Romans spread them across Europe and into Britain. The cat that started as a self-interested predator at the edge of a Syrian grain store was now, several thousand years later, moving across the known world. Not because humans bred it, not because humans planned it, because humans couldn't stop acquiring it. In 1232, Pope Gregory IX issued a document called the Vox in Rama, a letter describing devil worship in Germany, and it specifically named the cat, the black cat in particular, as an instrument of Satan, a physical manifestation of darkness, of evil, of the devil himself. What followed is one of the most catastrophic decisions in recorded history. Across Europe, for the next 2 centuries, cats were systematically persecuted, burned alive, thrown from towers on feast days, slaughtered at festivals as acts of piety, killed alongside anyone accused of witchcraft. By some estimates, the European cat population was reduced to a fraction of what it had been. The inquisitors believed they were purifying Europe of evil. What they were actually doing was removing the one animal that controlled the rat population. In 1347, a fleet of Genoese trading ships sailed into the port of Messina in Sicily. The sailors were either dead or dying of something no one had ever seen: the bubonic plague. Transmitted by fleas that lived on rats that in the century prior had experienced a dramatic reduction in their primary natural predator. The Black Death killed between 75 and 200 million people, between 30 and 60% of Europe's entire population, dead within 4 years. Historians and epidemiologists have debated for decades why the plague spread with such catastrophic speed across Europe specifically. One documented contributing factor, not the only factor but a real and measurable one: the European cat population had been systematically destroyed in the preceding century. Fewer cats, more rats carrying fleas, more fleas carrying plague, more plague. Pope Gregory IX's war on an animal he considered evil may have contributed indirectly to the deaths of tens of millions of human beings. The accident of cat domestication nearly ended in the 13th century, not from disease, not from a natural disaster, from a pope who was afraid of a sleeping animal. In 2009, Dr. Karen McComb at the University of Sussex published a study on something cat owners had suspected for years, but couldn't explain. Why is it so hard to ignore a hungry cat? McComb recorded cats in 2 states, when they were actively soliciting food from their owners, and when they weren't. Then she played both recordings to human participants who had no cat experience, no emotional attachment to the animals, no history, no bond. The non-owners still found the solicitation recording significantly more urgent, more irritating, more impossible to ignore. McComb analyzed the frequency and found something remarkable. When cats want something from a human, they embed a high-frequency cry inside their purr, a frequency that measures between 220 and 520 hertz, the exact frequency range of a human infant crying.
Your cat is not purring at you. It is purring at an infant somewhere deep in your nervous system, an infant that has been wired to respond to that specific frequency for millions of years. You are not choosing to get up and fill the bowl. Something older than your rational mind is making that decision for you. And here's the part that should stop you completely. No human bred this into cats. No human designed it. No human selected for it deliberately. At some point in the last 10,000 years, an individual cat made a specific vocalization near a human. The human responded, the cat was fed. The behavior was reinforced. The cats that did this had more success than the cats that didn't. Generation by generation, that sound became more precisely calibrated, more effective, more difficult to ignore. Cats accidentally discovered how to hack the human nervous system, and they have been running that program on us every single morning since. Here is something most cat owners choose not to think about. Domestic cats share 95.6% of their DNA with tigers. Not metaphorically similar, genetically near identical. Every behavior a tiger performs in the jungle, your cat performs in your living room. The slow, low stalk before the pounce, the patient waiting by the water source, the ambush from elevated positions, the covering of waste to conceal their presence from larger predators. Your cat is executing full apex predator behavior in a studio apartment. When a cat brings you a dead mouse, it is not giving you a gift. That is the comfortable story. Cats bring prey back to their territory. Your home is their territory. And when a cat repeatedly delivers dead animals to you specifically, research suggests it may be attempting to teach you to hunt. Because from the cat's perspective, you are a very large, very slow, very incompetent cat. You never hunt. You have no observable predator skills. You're enormous and you can't climb, and you spend an alarming amount of time staring at a glowing rectangle. You clearly need help. The headbutt you interpret as affection is a scent-marking behavior. Your cat is pressing its facial glands against you to claim you as part of its territory. It belongs to you. It did not consult you about this. Sometime tonight, you will pour food into a bowl, and a cat will walk over at a time entirely of its own choosing, eat what it wants, and leave the room without acknowledging you. We call this domestication, but consider what that word actually means. Every animal humans have domesticated over 10,000 years, we changed fundamentally. We took the wolf and made an animal that suffers anxiety without human presence. We took wild cattle and made animals that cannot survive without human management. We took the wild jungle fowl and made a bird that can barely support its own weight. We remade them. The domestic cat? Genetically almost identical to the wildcat hunting mice in the Syrian scrubland 10,000 years ago. The same bone structure, the same instincts, the same killing pattern. The same eyes that don't soften when they look at you. We didn't change it changed us. It found our grain stores. It tolerated our presence when every other wildcat ran. It positioned itself at the intersection of our food supply and our deep parental instincts. It invented a sound that reaches somewhere inside us that predates language. It convinced an entire civilization to worship it as a god. It survived a continent-wide religious massacre. It spread itself across the planet on our ships without ever being bred for the purpose. And it did all of this while keeping the one thing no other domestic animal retained: its wildness. Your dog would struggle to survive a week without you. Your cat would be fine. It doesn't need you. It simply decided 10,000 years ago at the edge of a fire in the Near East that you were a reasonable arrangement, that your grain meant mice, that your presence was a tolerable price, and every morning since it has walked to an empty bowl and made a sound aimed directly at something ancient inside you. And every morning since you have gotten up and fed it. Not because you domesticated it, because it decided to stay.